The courtroom was buzzing with tension, but no one expected what came next. Karen, with fire in her voice and arrogance in her eyes, stood up and hurled the most dangerous accusation anyone could make. She called Judge Judy racist. The word echoed like a gunshot, freezing the entire room. Gasps filled the air. Jaws dropped. And for a split second it felt like Karen had seized the power in that courtroom. But here's what she didn't know. Judge Judy wasn't just sitting on decades of wisdom and authority, she was sitting on receipts. Records that had been sealed away since 2003. Records that carried the weight of truth sharp enough to cut through every lie. And in the very moment Karen thought she had humiliated America's most famous judge, Judy was about to turn the tables in a way no one in that courtroom, or watching at home, would ever forget. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. If you believe truth always finds its way to the surface, comment the word truth below. It helps this story reach more people who still believe in real justice. The air in the courtroom was still trembling from Karen's outburst, but the real weight of her accusation stretched far beyond four walls and a wooden bench. When someone dares to call Judge Judy racist in front of a live audience and millions watching at home, it isn't just about one insult. It's about tearing at the very fabric of justice itself. Because in today's world, a single word like that doesn't just echo, it detonates. It spreads across social media. It flashes on news headlines, it fuels outrage, and before the truth even has a chance to speak, reputations can be destroyed forever. And that was the danger here. Karen wasn't just speaking out of anger. She was weaponizing a word, turning it into a blade meant to cut down the most respected judge in television history. If she succeeded, if Judy faltered for even a moment, the narrative would flip. It wouldn't matter that Judy had decades of experience, thousands of cases, or a reputation for fairness. The only thing people would remember was the accusation, racist. That was the trap. And if Judy had remained silent, if she had let the moment pass without a fight, Karen would walk out of that courtroom not only smug, but victorious. But there was a bigger stake, one that reached into living rooms across America. Because if a false accusation like this went unchecked, what message would it send? That truth doesn't matter? That character can be assassinated with one word? That anyone, no matter how guilty, could hide their sins behind a mask of victimhood? The danger wasn't just to Judge Judy, it was to the very idea of accountability. If Karen could walk into a courtroom, flip the script, and suddenly claim to be the oppressed, then the scales of justice weren't just tilted, they were broken. And here's the irony. While Karen thought she had placed Judge Judy on trial, the reality was that the spotlight was about to swing back on her, because Judy knew something Karen had prayed no one would ever uncover again. In 2003, 2 decades before this dramatic courtroom clash, Karen's own name had been carved into records that most people thought were sealed forever. Records that tied her to acts so dark, so indefensible, that even speaking them out loud would send shivers through the audience. Karen thought she was holding the sword, but Judy held the truth, and the truth is heavier than any weapon. But before that truth could be revealed, the stakes had to be made clear. This wasn't just a battle of insults. It wasn't just Judy versus Karen. It was about something much larger, something every viewer watching could feel in their chest. The war between arrogance and authority, lies and evidence, chaos and order. Because when a judge's power is mocked, when authority is smeared without proof, the question becomes, who's really in control? The loudest voice in the room, or the one who can back up every word with facts? And Judy wasn't just any judge. She was the embodiment of law and order on television for over 2 decades. She had stared down thousands of liars, manipulators, and cheats. She had been insulted, mocked, even threatened before, but she never flinched. Yet here, Karen wasn't just calling her unfair. She wasn't calling her rude. She was calling her something far more dangerous, a racist. And for Judge Judy, that wasn't just personal. That was a strike at her legacy, her family, her values, everything she had stood for. If she let this slide, decades of work could crumble overnight. That was the knife-edge moment the nation was sitting on. Millions of people watching live feeds, streaming clips, scrolling Twitter threads. They were all waiting to see if Judy would crack. Would she get angry and shout back, proving Karen's point? Would she stay silent, looking weak in the face of an accusation? Or would she do what only Judy could do? Bring out the kind of truth so sharp it silences even the loudest liar. The stakes weren't just about Karen's reputation or Judy's authority. They were about the audience too. Because when viewers saw Karen point her finger and throw that word across the courtroom, they weren't just thinking about Judy. They were thinking about their own lives. About the times someone had lied about them, about the times someone had twisted the truth to make them look guilty, about the times they had no way to fight back, because no one would listen. Karen wasn't just attacking Judy, She was touching a nerve that every honest person in America had felt at least once. The fear of being falsely accused. And that's why the tension rose higher than ever. Because in that single moment, it wasn't just Judy on trial. It was truth itself. If Judy failed, if Karen walked away unexposed, then the message to every liar watching would be clear. All it takes is one accusation, and you win. But if Judy struck back, if she pulled the curtains wide open and revealed the skeletons Karen thought she had buried in 2003, then the message would be the opposite. You can shout, you can lie, you can throw mud, but truth has a longer memory than you do. That was the storm gathering in the courtroom. The audience sitting in those wooden benches could feel it in their bones. Reporters holding their pens knew something bigger was about to break. And Karen herself, though smug on the outside, had a flicker in her eyes she couldn't hide. A flicker that showed maybe, just maybe, she was terrified Judy really did know more than she let on. Because when Judge Judy finally leaned forward, her voice steady and her eyes locked on Karen, it wasn't just to defend herself. It was to put the entire court and the entire country on notice. Accusations are cheap, but truth is priceless. And soon everyone would see exactly what Karen had been hiding for 20 years. The silence that followed Karen's accusation was thick enough to choke on. The courtroom had always been Judy's kingdom, a place where her authority could slice through lies with a single raised eyebrow. But now, that authority had been challenged in the most brutal way possible. Karen stood there, her chest puffed out, her finger still pointed like a weapon and her voice echoing in the minds of everyone present. "You're nothing but a racist, Judy." The audience gasped again, softer this time like the dying echo of an explosion. No one dared move. Even the bailiff, usually quick to bark commands, froze in place. Everyone's eyes darted between Karen's smug expression and Judy's calm, stone-like stare. The air was electric, charged with the tension of a fight everyone knew was coming, yet no one could predict how it would end. Karen didn't stop there. She smirked, pacing slowly as if she now owned the room. "That's right," she sneered, her voice growing louder. "You sit there on your throne pretending to care about justice, but we all know what this really is. You treat people differently depending on who they are. You think you're above accountability, but I see right through you." Her words dripped with venom, designed to humiliate, to strip Judy of her dignity. But Judy, with decades of experience staring down liars and manipulators, didn't flinch. She didn't shout back. She didn't even blink. Instead, she let Karen unravel herself. Let her anger stretch further and further until it started to sound less like confidence and more like desperation. The audience shifted in their seats, some whispering nervously, others glaring at Karen with thinly veiled disgust. This wasn't the fiery speech of a woman demanding justice. This was a meltdown, an attempt to drag the spotlight away from her own failures. Still, Judy stayed silent, her eyes locked on Karen like a hunter waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Karen mistook that silence for weakness. She slammed her palm down on the table in front of her, startling even the bailiff. "What, nothing to say?" she barked. "Because you know I'm right. You've built your career on humiliating people. You've built your name on tearing others down. And now finally someone has the courage to call you out for what you really are." For the first time, Judy leaned forward ever so slightly. The courtroom stilled even further, if that was possible. Her voice, when it came, was low and calm, but it carried more weight than all of Karen's shouting combined. "Are you finished?" she asked. The words cut through the air like a knife. Karen faltered just for a second. Her smirk twitched, her confidence cracked. She hadn't expected Judy to be so composed. But she recovered quickly, tossing her head back with a laugh. "Finished? Oh, I'm just getting started." She turned to the audience now, playing to the crowd as though she were on stage. "You all think she's fair, don't you? You all think she's some kind of hero. But how many times has she silenced people like me? How many times has she ignored voices that didn't fit her neat little version of the truth? I'm not afraid to say it, Judge Judy is a fraud and she's been hiding it for years." The whispers grew louder. The tension rose higher. And for a brief, dangerous moment, Karen almost had them. Almost. Because anger, when loud enough, can sometimes sound like courage. And lies, when repeated with enough force, can almost pass for truth. But Judy knew better. Judy always knew better. She slowly rose from her chair, her robe flowing behind her as she stood tall. Her presence filled the room, commanding attention without a single shout. Her gaze never left Karen, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades of authority. "You think you've exposed me, don't you?" she said, her tone sharp but steady. "You think one word shouted in anger is enough to rewrite reality. But here's the problem with lies, Miss Matthews. They don't hold up when the truth walks into the room." The audience leaned forward. Pens scratched against notepads. Cameras clicked. Everyone could feel it. Judy was about to swing the hammer. Karen's smugness faltered again. "What are you talking about?" she demanded. her voice wobbling just slightly. Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm was more terrifying than any scream. "I'm talking about your past," she said. "The one you've spent 20 years burying. The one you never thought would see the light of day again. You want to put me on trial? Fine. But you've just opened the door to your own." The color drained from Karen's face. She shook her head, stammering, You can't." But Judy didn't let her finish. "I can," she said, her eyes narrowing. "And I will." The courtroom erupted with murmurs, reporters whispering furiously as they scribbled notes. The audience sat wide-eyed, unable to believe what they were hearing. In one moment, the balance of power had shifted completely. Karen, who had stormed into the courtroom convinced she held the upper hand, now stood cornered, trembling at the edges of a truth she could no longer control. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, her expression firm but unreadable. "You called me racist," she said. "But before this day is over, the world will know exactly who you really are. And it won't be because of my opinion. It will be because of facts. Facts that you cannot erase no matter how loudly you scream." Karen's lips parted, but no sound came out. For the first time since her outburst, she looked small, fragile, as though the weight of her own secrets was finally pressing down on her shoulders. The audience sat frozen. Reporters gripped their pens so tight they nearly snapped. Everyone in that room knew what was coming next, and it was going to change everything. Because Judy hadn't just defended herself. She had set the stage for the most devastating revelation of Karen's life, and Karen knew it. The air inside the courtroom had gone heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every eye was fixed on Judge Judy. Every ear leaned in, desperate for what would come next. Even Karen, who just moments ago strutted like a conqueror, now looked pale, her smirk dissolving under the steady fire of Judy's gaze. Judy straightened her robe, placed her hands on the bench, and spoke with a calmness so sharp it felt like thunder disguised as a whisper. "Since you have chosen to attack my character publicly," she began, her voice steady but vibrating with authority, "I think it's only fair the public knows who they're really looking at when they see you." Karen's head jerked up. "What are you doing?" she stammered, her voice cracking. Judy didn't flinch. "I am doing what I've always done. Bringing truth into the light." "Records from 2003, your records?" Gasps shot through the audience like sparks. Reporters nearly leapt from their seats, pens scratching furiously. Karen's face drained of color. "Those were sealed," she hissed under her breath, panic clawing at her tone. Judy's eyes narrowed. "Sealed doesn't mean erased. And lies don't stay buried forever." She lifted a folder, thin, faded, but heavy with meaning. "These documents detail charges you hoped the world would forget. Charges that reveal the kind of person you really are. Not a victim, not a truth teller, but a woman with a history of violence." The words landed like a hammer. Karen shook her head violently, waving her hands as if to swat them away. "This is outrageous. You can't bring that up." "Oh, I can," Judy cut in, her voice like steel. "And I will." She opened the folder, her eyes skimming as the silence deepened. 2003 aggravated assault. Criminal threats. A violent altercation that left a man hospitalized. "Those aren't rumors, Ms. Matthews. Those are facts signed and sealed by the state." The audience erupted, gasps, whispers, disbelief filling the air. Some covered their mouths. Others shook their heads in shock. Reporters fired off texts and emails faster than their hands could move. The courtroom was no longer a courtroom. It was a stage, and Judy had just delivered the performance of a lifetime. Karen's legs buckled slightly. Her bravado shattered. She clutched the table like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Her lips moved, but no words came. The mask was gone. The finger-pointing, the shouting, the swagger, all gone, replaced with raw, unfiltered fear. Judy's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You called me racist. But what you failed to realize is that while you were busy building lies, the truth was waiting. And the truth is simple. Your past condemns you far louder than your accusations ever could." The room fell silent again. But it wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was the silence of justice hanging in the air like a verdict, and in that moment everyone knew. The fight was over. If you think Judge Judy did the right thing exposing Karen's past, hit the like button right now. It shows the world you stand on the side of truth. The moment Judge Judy's words fell, the courtroom was no longer just a courtroom. It became the epicenter of a storm that would ripple across the nation. Reporters scrambled, their pens flying, phones buzzing as they rushed to break the story. Karen's 2003 criminal records revealed live in court. One headline flashed within minutes. By the time Judy's gavel struck, the world outside those wooden walls was already ablaze. Inside, the audience couldn't contain their reactions. Some gasped aloud, hands clasped over mouths in disbelief. Others whispered furiously, replaying every word they had just heard. Parents in the back row pulled their children closer, whispering that this was why lies never win. And in the front, Karen sat collapsed, her once defiant figure shrinking into the chair like a shadow of herself. But it wasn't just the people in the room. Across America, millions tuned in, many by accident, expecting another routine Judge Judy case. Instead, they witnessed history. A live confrontation where arrogance was ripped apart by facts. Television anchors, visibly shaken, replayed the footage again and again, their voices hushed as though describing the aftermath of a national tragedy. "It's rare," one anchor admitted, "to see Judge Judy emotional. But tonight wasn't just about her authority. It was about exposing what so many try to hide." On social media, hashtags surged within seconds. Justice served shot to the top trend worldwide. Clips of Karen's outburst followed by Judy's revelation spread like wildfire, garnering millions of views in hours. "She called Judy racist," one post read. "But Judy had the receipts." Another user wrote, "You can scream lies for 20 years, but the truth will always wait for its moment." Thousands echoed the sentiment. Judy hadn't just defended herself. She had defended truth itself. Churches held impromptu prayer circles that evening, thanking God for truth that cannot stay buried. Families at dinner tables replayed the clip on their phones, children asking their parents why Karen lied, parents using it as a lesson. Never throw stones when your own house is built on broken glass. Even strangers on subway trains found themselves discussing the case, shaking their heads at the audacity of someone trying to play victim while hiding a violent past. And yet, beneath the shock and outrage, something else stirred. Respect. Respect for Judy's restraint, for her refusal to scream back, for her patience in waiting until the exact right moment to deliver the blow. Americans admired not just the revelation, but the way it was delivered. Calm, steady, factual. It was a reminder that justice doesn't need to shout. It simply needs to speak. By nightfall, Karen's name had become synonymous with hypocrisy. Her friends stopped answering calls, her allies distanced themselves, and her reputation, once wielded like a shield, now lay shattered in pieces for the whole world to see. Meanwhile, Judge Judy didn't need to bask in victory. She had done what she always did, let the facts speak. But this time the facts hadn't just silenced a liar. They had united a nation around a single truth. Arrogance may roar for a moment, but justice echoes forever. When the echoes of Judy's revelation finally settled, what lingered in the room wasn't just shock, and it was clarity. The lesson was unmistakable. Lies can roar for years, but the truth has infinite patience. It waits, it watches, and when the moment comes, it strikes harder than any accusation ever could. Karen thought she could weaponize words, hurling racist like a dagger meant to pierce Judy's reputation. But words without truth are hollow. They crumble when faced with evidence, and in that courtroom they crumbled completely. The lesson was bigger than Karen herself. It was about every person who's ever tried to destroy someone with a false label, and about every honest person who's ever feared they couldn't defend themselves. Judy's handling of the confrontation proved something crucial. Authority isn't loud. It isn't reckless. Real authority is calm, steady, and rooted in truth. By letting Karen dig her own grave with arrogance, Judy showed the nation that justice doesn't need to scream. It only needs to reveal. The legacy of this moment would ripple far beyond that day. In homes, classrooms, and workplaces, people repeated Judy's example. Don't let lies rattle you. Don't let anger dictate your response. Wait, hold steady, and when the time is right, let the truth speak for itself. And that was Judy's unshakable gift to America that day. Not just the exposure of one woman's hidden past, but a timeless reminder that no matter how heavy the accusation, truth always weighs more. The courtroom, once noisy with gasps and whispers, now sat in stunned silence. All eyes were on Judge Judy, but she wasn't basking in victory. Her expression was calm, her tone measured. This wasn't about triumph. It was about truth finally stepping into the light. Judy leaned forward, her voice steady, carrying the weight of the lesson. "Justice," she said, "doesn't bend to arrogance. It doesn't break under lies. And it certainly doesn't disappear because someone shouts loud enough. Justice stands, and tonight it stood taller than ever." Karen sat frozen, her face pale, her hands trembling against the table. The very woman who had once stormed in with finger pointed high now looked small, crushed beneath the weight of her own past. She had called Judy racist, hoping to drag her down. Instead, her own secrets had dragged her lower than she ever imagined. The audience shifted, some nodding, others wiping silent tears. What they had witnessed wasn't just another Judge Judy case. It was a national reckoning. A reminder that false accusations can never outweigh the power of evidence. That dignity, even in the face of insult, is stronger than rage. And outside the courtroom, the impact only grew. News stations replayed the moment endlessly, anchors marveling at Judy's composure. Social media erupted with messages of support. She didn't just defend herself. She defended truth itself. Across America, conversations sparked about accountability, honesty, and the danger of weaponizing words. Judy closed her binder, her final words echoing with finality. Racism is real and it is serious. But to use it as a shield for your own sins, that is the real betrayal. Justice has no color, only truth. The gavel struck. The case was closed, but the moment lived on. Families at dinner tables whispered about it. Strangers on buses replayed the clip. Parents told their children that lies never win. Judy had shown not just what it means to be a judge, but what it means to be unshakable in the face of falsehood. Karen left the courtroom in disgrace, her once weaponized voice silenced by the very truth she thought she could outrun. Judy, on the other hand, left with her legacy stronger than ever. A legacy of fearlessness, fairness, and faith in justice itself. If this story left you speechless, share it with someone who still believes in truth and justice. And don't forget to subscribe, because here every story proves that lies may scream for a moment, but justice always gets the last word.